Hello. I'm hopefully looking into faces and ears and eyes that are very interested in the subject we're going to have now, because it's going to be about the cross-border investments between Germany and China in that whole field that we are here for, biotechnology, life sciences. And we're making this investment dialogue here now for the 5th time, and we're doing this every year for several times. I will later on give you as well the dates for that. Mainly, and I have to go on, we are doing this as a part of, for the German-Chinese investors community. We are, and you can see that here in these wallpapers, what we are doing. We are doing a networking networking for this whole community. We are doing, we have a LinkedIn channel. We have a big network with our clients where you can see where there's who's taking part there, and we are publishing the news in the investment field many days when you go on our website. So that's basically what we do. And now I'm coming to the panel of the people that we have. I have to look here that I'm not too far from the camera. So there you see, we will start with Axel Lohse. He works for the GTAI, which probably most of the people know here. He's Deputy Director Pharmaceuticals, Medical and Biotechnology. It's a pretty long title, Axel, I must say. It's not so easy. It's and it's within the Exportinitiative of the Gesundheitswirtschaft, of the, and there obviously is our government behind it. So it's a lot of how middle and small-sized enterprises can make the market in China, how to help them, how could they bring their products to China and make a market there. There's a lot of spin-offs as well, but Axel will tell that in a second, where they push the possibilities for them. So they're really helping them. So he has a lot of insights. He does that for many years. So I will be very inquisitive in what you say. And actually, I know a little. It's going to be a very interesting presentation. After that, we will have a panel discussion with Axel Lohse as well. Rong Hui Gao, who is he consults a lot of investors that go from Europe to China, but as well Chinese investors that invest in Europe. So he has a lot of insights for us there. And he has as well, was involved with 2 business parks in China, so he has a lot of in-depth knowledge from there. Andreas Grassauer, he's the CEO of Marinomed, who just recently made a partnership with a Chinese enterprise to bring their product to China, but I will come later on to that. And then Dr. Maria Lamotke, which I will introduce to you later. Then she has as well a lot of knowledge with her husband. They have the company Bicol, so they have a lot of experience in biotechnology with China, and as well a lot of they give a lot of as well advice to people. So it's going to be very interesting from the panel. And as I said, the network you will find here, and you are more than invited to join our network, because we have a very networking idea and mentality, meaning that we want to make the links between the companies that are interested to invest in China, and to link maybe to targets, link maybe to advisors, because that's one of the specialty of us, to have a very broad network and bringing the companies and the people together. So after this panel, you can speak to us. There's Michael Zahn here, I am here, Markus Rieger here is. So just speak to him, and anything you need concerning networking, we will be more than happy to help you with that. So Now we're coming to the insights of Axel Lose, and there are going to be facts in there, there are going to be interesting stuff in there. So I'll just hand over to you, Axel, and I'm very inquisitive to your speech. You find here the, I don't think I just.
Just checking the technique. I can't see my slides. Okay, just. Okay, yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Axel Lose. I was already introduced, and China's healthcare market is one of the largest and most exciting markets in the world. And in the next few minutes, I want to say a few words about the market and the key issues when it comes to China. So for more in-depth information, we also have a study, but only available in German language. So download it now or you get it later. It's free. So the market in general, but also the healthcare market, is characterized by impressive figures. So as everyone knows, China is home to more than 1.4 billion people. And the population of population of those over 65 years is almost comparable to twice the total population of Germany. In addition, about 20% of the Chinese population suffers from non-communicable diseases, and the number of people affected increases by a good 20 million each year. In total, there are more than 300 million people in China who have been diagnosed with a chronic disease. That includes also 100 million people, adults, suffering from diabetes. This is the largest diabetes population in the world that we have. And cancer is now the leading cause of death, followed by cardiovascular diseases. At the same time, communicable diseases are still a matter of concern, especially in rural areas. And as we can conclude from this slide, there's a substantial unmet need for medical care in China anyway. So let's have a look at the healthcare spending. Total spending on healthcare in China in 2021 was around 1 trillion euros, of which government spending amounted certainly around 63%. And analysts, they forecast that the total expenditure will grow to more than 1.5 trillion euros by 2027, while the government share will remain roughly the same. However, but what does it mean in detail? So health expenditure per capita was around 650 euros in 2021, and forecasts predict that it will rise up to more than 1,000 euros per capita by 2027. About 95% of the Chinese population are enrolled in the state health insurance, the NHIS, and the NHIS reimburses all the large part of the costs of the medicines that are listed in the NRDL, which is the National Reimbursement List for Drugs. So, however, the level and the scope of health insurance in China is far away from that in Western countries. So the market for private insurance remains still large. In any case, raising health expenditure is putting a massive pressure on politics and the public health financing. And the politicians in China, they are responding with increased price competition in the centralized purchases of medicine, as well as the massive promotion of generics and the traditional Chinese medicine, shortly TCM. So the country is highly dependent on imports. In 2020, just to give you the figures, China imported pharmaceutical worth 30 billion euros, and the imports of medical devices amounted up to 16.5 billion euros. And diagnostic imaging, just to mention the part, the imports had a worth of 5.5 billion euros. Together with you, I want to have a look on several key dimensions, on the political environment, on funding, as well as on research and development, the local Chinese innovation output, and China's integration in the global markets. So let's start with the political dimension. Anyone who wants to deal and wants to be successful in China is almost always dependent on government support. China's public healthcare system is centrally organized, as you might know, and under the supervision of the State Council. So healthcare policy is formulated in particular by the National Health Commission, shortly the NHC, and the NHC sets the policy guidelines for the whole country. The provinces and the cities or the regions are tasked with the implementation of the plans made by the NHC. There are several other players on the national level, as you can see here on the slide, but in the end, they are all linked with the NHC and they have all to report to the federal government. But let's stay briefly with the national health policy. Probably the most important plan in this field is the Healthy China 2030 plan. This plan from 2016 has declared healthcare to be a national political priority in China. Other plans and guidelines are just underpinning this major plan. For example, you might know the 5 years plan. They are crucial too in the healthcare industry. And we will return to the 14th five-year plan within a second, but other central pillars of the national health policy are an improved management of public hospitals as well as the development of the infrastructure. Thus, 2,000 provincial hospitals and almost 30,000 local hospitals shall be built, according to the plans of the national government. It is also important to expand care in rural areas, and that shall get a push by the digitization of healthcare. Besides meeting the country's huge unmet need in healthcare, the aim of the Chinese government is as well to establish global competitiveness for the Chinese healthcare industry. Therefore, the Made in China 2025 initiative should also be taken into account. The aim of the initiative is to become a world leader in a number of high-tech industries, and of course, biotechnology is one of these sectors. The government programs in China are also designed to attract scientists from abroad and provide resources for the growing industry. And let's get back to the 14th five-year plan. In March 2021, the Chinese government published the 14th five-year plan. This was the kick-off for all economic sectors and social areas to start implementing it in order to achieve the ambitious goals by 2026. So it is intended to maintain the impressive development that we have seen during the last 10 years. The 14th five-year plan sets also research priorities, and particularly relevant for us here today is brain and neurological research, genetics and biotechnology, clinical medicine and biosafety. So if we look at the relevant benchmarks here in the left column on my slide, we see an appeal for more innovation, technological breakthroughs and more biosimilars and generics. So in short, more of everything, more in all areas, and more made in China. So the words more and better are often the only parameters we see in the 14th five-year plan by the government. What remains is clear. This is a clear calling for the provinces and the government of the provinces, as well as for the economy in China, to do more. So, of course, the Chinese government is also aware that this will not happen by its own. So therefore, the funding instruments are being sharpened and expanded, and biotechnology companies receive incentives such as subsidized laboratory and production space, as well as generous tax incentives. Technology parks and clusters are also promoted. And the Chinese government has recognized that encouraging innovation in the country also require regulatory reforms. And since 2015, Chinese regulators have introduced a series of measures and reforms that create a friendlier environment for the biopharma industry. To help innovative medicines reach the market faster, the Pharmaceutical Regulatory Commission has begun to allow foreign clinical data to support applications. Similarly, review procedures have been speeded up, and some of the milestones of the reforms you can here see on the slide. But As usual, the market approval becomes before turnover and business activities in China. So China is moving step by step towards international standards. European market authorization is not recognized, and a lot of information has to be submitted, of course, in Chinese language. The two biggest issues that cause headaches to the pharmaceutical industry are clinical trials and quality management. Quality management in particular is now seen as a bigger hurdle. Market participants, they are more and more frequently pointing that the complexity of providing GMP conformity in compliance with the Chinese guidelines gives them headaches. So following the US FDA, there are also so-called green light applications for innovative pharmaceuticals. Other hot topics in the field of regulations are pharmacovigilance and, of course, post-approval. But where happens innovation in China? So the Chinese government plans and reforms have helped to kickstart a strong innovation pipeline. However, today, most of the molecules from China are Me Too or Me Better drugs. Of course, China's biotech industry is still young and needs to mature over the coming years, and building in-house research and development capacity remains a top priority. Oncology is the leading topic among the Chinese biotechs that are developing therapies, and vaccines are a big topic too. But this is not surprising given the tradition of China of vaccinations there. In the field of insulin, Chinese companies also want to gain market shares, not only within China, but also globally. To attract even more skilled workers, the 1,000 Talents program by the national government of China recruits more than 10,000 well-qualified Chinese nationals from the US each year. So what can we say until now? China's strategy has shown impressive results so far. We see the establishment of more than 110 bioscience research parks, in addition over 340 drugs listed in China's national reimbursement list to subsidize high-priced innovative therapies, and China's university system has been expanded remarkably to increase the number of high qualified graduates in engineering, in biotechnology, and in biochemistry. The 13th five-year plan, so the last five-year plan, promoted the formation of clusters in a top-down manner. So you can see the four major biotechnology clusters areas here on the slide in different blue shades. Development index of the biotechnology in China was published in 2019. It looked at cities, industrial parks, companies, and VC providers, and then ranked biotech hotspots based on 50 different indicators, and you can see the top 20 hotspots in China here on the left side in the column. It is interesting to note that the hotspots are also essentially the same as the clusters, with addition of Huanan, Hainan, and Heizhou. Sorry for my pronunciation of Chinese names, but we see additional 3 regions where innovation is on the uprise too. So the innovation gap in biotech between the USA, Europe and China is shrinking, but will remain for some years, as stated by market analysts. We want to talk today about capital as well. So there has been a remarkable increase in funding for biotech companies in China. In China, more than 1,000 venture capital firms are directly funded by the Chinese government. In 2019, a total of 20 state-owned venture capital funds alone had a volume of 394 billion euros in order to support, of course, the capitalization of scientific ideas. And in addition, there are numerous private venture capital funds. So there are also new options for rising capital, as shown here. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange eased listing rules in 2018 to allow biotech companies with no prior revenue to go public. And this was also followed in 2019 by the launch of the Star Board in Shanghai. This is a stock market designed specially for pre-startup technology companies. The market value of listed innovative biopharma companies from China on the Nasdaq, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and the Shanghai Stock Exchange has increased from 3 billion US dollars in 2016 to over 380 billion US dollars in 2021. And IPOs by Chinese companies have accelerated in 2020. For example, 23 Chinese IPOs took place. You see how they were distributed among the stock exchanges, and 7 of the 10 largest pharma or biopharma IPOs from 2018 to 2020 were from China. The situation is nevertheless such that money is available, but attractive domestic innovations are still missing to some extent as a target for all the Chinese money. So the development of China's biotechnology sector therefore continues to depend heavily on interaction with multinational and foreign companies. Chinese FDI and outbound M&A are made in the hope of bringing innovative products, services, and expertise to the domestic market. Venture IP contracting, VIC, is becoming more and more popular, and Chinese VCs buy foreign intellectual property or molecule licenses for the Chinese markets and then subcontract drug development to Chinese CROs and CMOs. The investments serve to reinforce the already existing capacities at home, and it seems that expanding into new area is less of concern or less relevant so far. But Chinese merger and acquisition abroad are decreasing in all countries. One reason is China's state administration of foreign exchange, or short SAFE, and they have tightened the monitoring for foreign investments and investors and require now banks to report all outbound transfer that are more than 5 million US dollars. So most of the current venture IP contracting deals most of the current venture IP contracting deals involve rights to sell drugs in China, but some also include global rights to conduct clinical trials and obtain marketing approval in the US and Europe. Multinational pharmaceutical companies pay particular attention to Chinese biotech companies when it comes to making use of the local R&D centers and licensing out. So this tendency has increased. There are several models through which multinational companies try to capture and stimulate innovation in China, among which are the models of partnerships, of course, launching local investment funds, setting up incubators to promote early-stage innovation, and opening technology platform to Chinese innovators. And now let's have a look at the challenges. Chinese competitors are gaining importance in international trade, and China's government plans to slow down the cost explosion in the healthcare sector by hopefully cutting the costs. And what we see is, of course, that it leads to a lot of localization requirements by the Chinese government and a massive cutthroat competition in the Chinese market. They want to get out the international competitors. So China's government wants to secure the country a global top position in high technologies. And in 2020, Beijing introduced the concept of dual circulation. Another step was to pass the anti-sanctions law, which punishes foreign companies that participate in foreign sanctions. So the USA and Europe, now to our side, do not want to give up their technological lead in several key industries, as well as in the biotechnology, or this includes the biotechnology area. And this is leading to a series of countermeasures. The buzzword for these measures in the West is decoupling. So starting in 2018 by tightening the investment controls in the US was the kickoff for it, and this was made possible by the Foreign Investment Risk Review Modernization Act, or shortly FIRMA. This means that foreign investments in companies with certain critical technology, such as biotechnology, can be subject to a mandatory reporting requirement, and there are penalties, of course, for violating these requirements. And after the Trump administration, the Biden administration has expanded the measures on decoupling both economies. Sorry. just disturbing. Okay, thank you. I just tried. Okay. The Biden administration, as I mentioned, they're expanding the measures on decoupling both economies, and now several hundred Chinese companies are now on the blacklists of the US authorities. And the US government also announced already a supply chain trade strike force to prevent supply chains from being undermined. And the imports of goods with too many Chinese components the imports have to be, sorry. I'm very sorry because of the announcement, it's quite difficult. So what is announced, they want to reduce all the imports that have too many critical Chinese components. And this is causing headaches, especially to the pharmaceutical industry. And on the other side, both the EU and the German government speak of China as a systemic competitor. The new German Foreign Trade Ordinance, Außenwirtschaftsverordnung, or shortly AWV, also brings challenges to the industry. The audits for foreign investments could slow down the development of all key industries that have large financing needs and that are looking for venture capital from abroad. So European companies are in a dilemma now. Compliance with the regulation of both countries, I mean China and the US, makes foreign business more and more complicated, and the possibilities for technological cooperation are getting worse. On the top of that, we see also problems with logistics. And ultimately, and this is the takeaway message from this slide, is that geopolitical considerations are gaining of importance also for companies in the healthcare sector and their business. And this is just a conclusion so far from my side. So we see that there are more and more opportunities in the Chinese healthcare industry. For biotechs, diagnostic companies, and also laboratory technology, there are a lot of chances. And policymakers in China, they are providing many good incentives. Chinese capital is also looking for innovations abroad. On the other hand, regulations are increasing on all sides. In the Chinese market itself, there's a massive competition, as I mentioned, in favor of domestic providers, and the systemic competition is giving business with China an increasingly political color. So what is needed is more China competence in companies and academia. It is important to understand the other side, not only in terms of technologies and financing, but it's important to know the business practices and the socio-economic terms in China. So a China strategy is needed for all that are interested in the market in China, and the strategy should not only be calculated in business quarters. Planning cycles and political guiding ideas dictate the Chinese economy to think in the long term, and I think so should do our companies too. In any case, it will become more expensive for everyone, so that's for sure. Whether we have to search for new suppliers, new locations, or coping with upcoming double standards, or for example, if you have to build separated R&D departments to fit in both markets or in the global markets. And companies in the healthcare industry in particular, I think they have a difficult time of it as they cannot easily switch to alternative markets. And especially startups, we are talking about them today as well, that are looking for growth capital to survive could be among the losers with the increased requirements for audits, etc., etc. So on the other hand, crises and restrictions were usually the moments of great technological innovations, and people are smartest in crisis. So I'm looking forward to the experiences and insights during the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Here is a little bit more of self-promotion, but you find the slides afterwards on the platform. So thank you very much for the attention here. Thank you.
Oh, a present, huh? That's presented. Okay, so can I ask the panelists to come up on the panel? so that we can already start with our discussion. But first, I just wanted to say, I mean, this is what we do as well. This is our investment guide and our magazine. What we publish, what we are not only analog, we are as well digital, and we are actually streaming this here. So when you want to see that again, you can see that in the internet, and you can even call colleagues now and say like, hey, there's this interesting panel. You can find it on the internet, which would be a possibility as well. So now I'm looking forward to our panel discussion. I shortly introduced already, and I will introduce our panelists now even more, and I will start with Maria Lamotke, which you see here and which you see here. And there it says she's chairwoman of Biotechnologie. She works there now for a very long time. You started, that was far more than 10 years ago, so you really know the company. And this company does a lot of business with China in the field of biotechnology. And I wanted to start, obviously, with you first, ladies first, I'd say in that case. And if you look on, I mean, you just said, Axel Lose, one of the goals of the Chinese government is to have more biosimilars and generics at lower prices. But that's going to be a very competitive market. And how do you see that in advantaging Chinese companies versus companies that come from abroad? So how do you see in that field the chances, but as well maybe the risk and the difficulties to enter the Chinese market as an investor in that area?
Well, as you said, so Biocol is 20 years on the market and also 20 years in Shanghai already. It's Biocol Biotechnology Shanghai Company Limited. It's 100% daughter company of the German entity, which is also very special because it's so normally is the case that if you go to China, if you create any partnership, then it's actually joint venture. And so if you think about investment, it's not only investing in a certain object, it's really taking the whole system with you. And this is an important point for making a decision. How do I see China as a country? How do I see the political system? Is it comparable to Germany in our case? So is it possible then to transfer all the decision or what I know about how do I do the business immediately to China? And there I would say it's not really possible. So you really have to, even with the same naming of the ministries, or the same naming with the ideas, what kind of directions to follow, what kind of industry will be supported in a country, it's still a little bit different procedure they go for. And there also the regions are very specific. So Axel Rose was mentioning the development of different clusters there. What we also see in Shanghai, where we are, it's completely different region, it's completely different way of doing business or investment compared to Beijing, for example. And
in what sense? How would you say concretely the differences?
Well, I would say, so we are very happy in Shanghai. So it's much closer to, let's say, Western point of view. So it's a very business-oriented society there. It's very international, and maybe because it's far away or further away from the government, it allows this spirit of doing business, and it really it's possible to make deals there. So the people are very interested in getting the product and getting the innovation. And this is actually also the certainly a difference how the government is supporting investment in China and in Germany, because Germany supports the growth of the country, in the sense, the growth of the hubs, and bringing and increasing the sales and employment in the country. And China is more focused in bringing innovation to China and getting the know-how to China.
Okay, so for introducing, everybody starts with their opening statement, I'd say, and then we dive deeper into the discussion. Next to Mariela Motke is sitting Dr. Andreas Grassau. I'd say you're, I wouldn't even know the word in English, but you're so long in the business now. You have a background as a virologist, as I've learned, but you're more than 20 years, I think, now in the business. You founded 2006 Marinomed, and you're in the field of a lot of that has to do with the respiratory system, right? In that area, made some patents, some innovations there, and now you found a Chinese partner even. So you probably have an interesting view how to partner with a Chinese company. What are the factors that have to be looked up when you do that, how you have to make the negotiations, what is important. But in the end, you made a happy deal. As far as I understood, you got the 2 million euros prepayment, and you get royalties even there. So, and as I see, and I can actually only recommend that to you, I looked at Crunchbase, about partnerships. You probably have seen between Fosun and Biotech, and there was a buyer that had it with Wuxi Biologicals. But then there's many from the US, but not so many from Germany. If BeiGene made a partnership with Leap Therapeutics, Grand Pharma made a partnership with Oncosec, etc. So maybe you have an idea how German and Austrian companies could even make more partnerships by these kind of investments in China.
Yes, thanks a lot. In terms of how to partner, we heard already in your talk. It's about understanding the needs of the partner and understanding the needs of the environment where you go. So it's a very good idea to do your own research in terms of intelligence, in terms of market intelligence. We were quite lucky. We have in Austria, we have a foreign trade organization. And even as a small company, we simply called them in Beijing.
Like the GTA what's it in Austria?
The Wirtschaftskammer. Yeah.
The Wirtschaftskammer. So for anybody in Austria, go to the Wirtschaftskammer and get some knowledge from there.
And I encourage you to do so and ask them for help and ask them for support, because those people are there. They can understand that they even can call the companies and then help you in getting in contact. The second thing is, for example, we learned when we partnered ISS, we were surprised in the first place that the Chinese partners first asked us, please, do you take care on production of the final product, because we would have a certain time period to do so, and then go for later production in China. And we said, okay, that couldn't be because it's not the policy. And they said, yes, but we want to learn how to do these things. And in order to do so, it has to run somewhere. Yeah. And better you establish it first and then we transfer it. At the end of the day, it turned out that we partnered with the company Luoxin. They said, okay, no, we want to do it first place. We want to do the production. We want to do serve the entire market. And then they agreed, also said, yeah, that's a good thing. We are a small company. We don't have the production capacity, but we probably need much more capacity in the area in Asia. So why don't you, as a Chinese partner, establish that? And we can use that resource for exporting to other countries there under the license. And that made both sides happy, because the Chinese partner had a good business case, much better business case than with the domestic market alone, but then also with serving other markets and probably even the US, and that made it very attractive for both sides. And that's why the deal went
now
positive.
there's investors and companies coming to China, and they're afraid of losing intellectual property in some sense. So were you at some point afraid, and did you discuss to others where you said, no, we better partner with this company, so because they feel more reliable? Or what were your thoughts on that?
is a small life science company that is purely in innovation. Our business model is creating IP and then selling it at the end of the day, either with our products or in partnerships, a typical life science biotech business model. So the only thing what you have at the end of the day is a piece of paper, in our case also Chinese patents, that you can sell. And what we learned and what we see that, at least what I learned also from the intelligence, that this landscape in China that, or this people say, they are stealing technology. It's not the case. They are developing their own things. They're of course copying like we are copying things, but they are pushing for innovation and they are applying much more patents at the moment, especially in the life science industry, than entire Europe. So when it comes to innovation and application of patent, the output of the Chinese life science academic field has increased so much that it's not yet anymore a kind of it's already about taking the leadership already in the field because it's so heavy investments. And what we learned in the partnerships when we were discussing with Chinese scientists and Chinese people, the level of qualification when you talk with the people is extremely high, especially the young ones. So there must be a very good education system that trains these young people. And I'm always impressed how well they speak English. And then we consider how is our Chinese. So there's a lot of work to do here in Europe when we want to establish the partnerships. So I encourage, probably we should do much more in schools in teaching educating our young people, and even especially offer language courses, which should be helpful in future.
So concerning that, so you have already in your in Austria, in your business entities, do you have Chinese people working for you that you were getting on board in China, or does it even go so far?
Actually, we don't have Chinese citizens working for us, but we have people who have already worked with Chinese companies before.
Okay, cool. So now, Axel, I just had you already. That's fine. For the opening statement, I will go to Rong Hui Gao, who is. We spoke before a little, and I have to say I'm very happy that he is here because I'm Bavarian and he's a fan of a really good Bavarian Schweinshaxe with a good Bavarian beer. So by talking that, he's as well an expert, I think, for bringing the best from both cultures together, because he consults a lot of, as I said before, European companies that want to invest in China, but as well Chinese companies that invest here. So there you have to know really both worlds, and you have to know what are the prejudices, what will maybe have investors being more afraid. And so you said to me when we spoke before this event here, you said that here you often experience an attitude of we don't trust these Chinese, and that could make an investment more difficult. And then on the other hand, you see the Chinese being pretty cautious when they make the investment. So maybe you give the insights, like if you, for example, would have to consult Mr. Grassauer on his next investment, whatever, like what are really points that we should have in mind when we're targeting an investment in China, or maybe the other way around, is that like, this is really a critical point you should have in mind when you prepare the investment. So maybe you give us some on your insights that you had on these nearly 20 years that you're doing this kind of business.
Many thanks. It's a great pleasure for me to be here, and the first time to participate in such a forum here, and also the great exhibition. I have learned a lot, and I have spoken to over dozens of companies already, and to me it's a learning process. I wish I could have a formula to be more scientifically to explain then how successful we can be.
Yeah.
Having learned a lot of lessons during my previous experience, working with the multinational companies and many small, medium companies from both sides, I said I would like to share more about the lessons I have learned or through facilitate this company. Some very successful models, experience, cases, and also some terrible failures. I've been involved in those cases. I think it might be useful for the audience to see. In terms of the partnership, I think this going to be this already transformed into a different stage because of my age, my experience. Back to, let's say, about 15 years ago, or even 20 years ago, and the perception from Europe to China was very strong, and not much interest in China. And in the innovation side, not many people talk about it at all. And Wuxi, at that time, called a Wuxi Pharma, and they basically provide the basic service. You know, brought the expertise from the US, and then created their team to service. To provide service for the multinationals first, and then gradually build the capability to educate the local companies to people who are familiar with the CRO services, etc. And that was a foundation about 20 years ago. Then involved in some biosimilar, generic drug development, and that's for also about 10 years. And quickly, they jump in the so-called new drug development. Again, it's mostly fast follower or me better. And then I had experience with the Morphosis based in Munich. So back to 2013, Morphosis came to China, asked me to connect with the local companies. At those times, I find some market leaders who put more investment in new drug development for antibody. They got a new antibody platforms. At that time, was very highly innovative and influential. At that time, for example, for 3 Chinese leading companies, they talk about new drug. Actually, it's not a new drug. It's a biosimilar. And so when you talk to them, there's no chemistry. So they were very disappointed, Morphosis. But I introduced the lead to them, and including a company called the Simsia. Many of you, you may know it's a middle-sized company, but they built an incubator, and it was led by a scientist, Dr. Zhang. So it was not successful. I was disappointed. They were disappointed, but the lead was there. So back to 2015, a new company was created called IMAP. And today, it's a public company on NASDAQ, and when they were listed, the valuation was like $700 million, and within 2 years' time. That was back to 2017, but they listed later. And the company, the founder, was the person I connected to, with Morphosis. And they licensed the first candidate from Morphosis. And they developed from preclinical to clinical stage. And they re-licensed. And they licensed 2. And this experience, I'm telling you, when China is ready, they can be fast and they can be very healthy. And today, the company is very successful developing new drug. And that's because of the previous foundation. And the partnership at the beginning, you may not expect to go to that level. And now, it's completely transformed. More companies today, you see, the licensing out from China, from this company. Like recently, for example, Beijing licensed the PD-1 to Novartis, $2 billion revenue. And then Beijing was created back to 2011. The co-founder, John Euler, I know him very well. When he co-founded the company, just with two people, with no money, with a concept. And they quickly, 11 years later, this company valued at a multi-billion dollar on NASDAQ. And today, I introduced them to Basel 3 years ago. And they were very, very successful. and they are with a multiple partnership with the Amgen, with Celgene, Novartis, etc. So it's a long process. But today, for partnership, many companies in China, you have to deal with, they have a different perception. New companies established with a good team, with a multinational background, mostly from the US. They educated and worked in the US and came back with a US mindset. But some company, very traditional, take slow steps.
So, Ronghui, the one conclusion, if you have this attitude, we don't trust these Chinese, I mean, you will still not get that away from a lot of investors, but still they like to invest. So one of the conclusions from what I hear from what you say is like, make a lot of connections, a lot of nods to the community in China, in your field, because you never know when this is going to become into reality in a product or a joint venture or whatever. And then when it happens, then it will happen pretty fast, but there might be a long way before. So increase the probability by doing a lot of connections, and don't let that maybe attitude of, I'm not so sure of these Chinese companies, don't let that refrain you from doing that. That's a conclusion I would get from what you're saying. Is that right?
I think it makes a lot of sense, but you have to, as I said, separate into three groups of people, the companies from Europe. One group of people, which is very hard to convince them. These people have a strong perception. When you mention China, IP, risk, you cannot trust the people. And these people, because of they don't, either they have a very bad experience or they absorb a lot of negative information about the country, China, our market, and these people are difficult. Or some people say, I know about China, I know about the risk, but I think that might be good potential. I would like to give a try, and that would be a good starting point. But the third one is like, I'm ready to China. And I'm willing to find the right partner. How can I find the right candidates? And these people are much easier. You don't need a convincing process.
Sure.
So I think the later two group of people, I would say, spend more effort to increase the trust. But also, China is a big company. Already Maria mentioned, Beijing and Shanghai, different culture, which is absolutely the truth. So you may find companies more easily who are based in Yangtze River Delta, and the team has international, obviously, members. Many companies now, they have a European advisor or employee or from the US, so much easier for companies from Europe to form a partnership with them and reduce the trust risk. That's what I would conclude.
Okay, but so if we're taking this, how to build up the as an investor, an investment case in China, and even if I'm a small company, maybe I'm a spin-off of a big company, but how do I do that? What are your advices there, Axel, that you give to these companies? And we, in our discussion before the presentation, you said there's going a lot of more politicalization, I'd call it, of the companies. So you might even have a person that really takes care of all these political issues, whatever political project manager, when you have an investment, and we are not thinking in these kind of categories. So you think for preparing that business in the future, that will be an important point. And what else will you give as an advice to these companies that are heading the Chinese market?
So thank you. I already had a big share of the discussion today. So, it's quite the same. I think like in the Wirtschaftskammer, what happens with us is like there's a company and first there's not a question, but they say, I want to go to China. So there's a good, they want to be with their peer group. Everybody is talking about, I want to go to the US, and now everyone wants to go to China. And our first question is then, where you want to go, and this meets with what you said, just because they have the impression of China, of this big country, and then we say, okay, now you have to everything is controlled from Beijing, from the national level, but then there are a lot of provinces, and they have a big share within the healthcare system. So everything about pricing, public tenders, etc., this is controlled on the province level. And then you might have a look besides Shanghai and Beijing, as you also mentioned, so there are other regions too. This is so the first question that we are saying, and then what we are doing is, for example, first to give an objective information. I was very keen on politicalization of the business now, but what we at Germany Trade Invest and the Health Made in Germany initiative do is giving objective information. So you have to be clear what is happening, what are the numbers, and you have to have a strategy, as I mentioned. This is what we are telling the people. And then we are going with a delegation trip, for example, and then introducing step by step the market. So to get the first contact, to build trust with the market. So you will have a B2B meeting with, organized by us. This won't be a match, maybe it will be a match, maybe it won't be a match, but you get a feeling for the market, and I think you can start from there. This is what we are offering. We are just enabling for the first step. And the second scenario, what we are meeting with the companies is when there's already something going on in the Chinese market, and then suddenly they say, oh, I have an IP issue. What can I do? Is the foreign ministry helping me to set there something? There are a lot of illusions what we can do. Sometimes we can help, but then there's the other one that then we say, okay, what was your strategy? What happened? Why it came so? And then, oh yeah, we just entered the market, and then we had a bad connection and so on. And so this is like the two scenarios we are meeting with, and what we want to do is like to accompany the companies on their customer journey on the way to China. What we are promoting is exports and sellings, and to grow the German industry by partnerships with companies from abroad. So it's a little bit different scenario.
And how can you help the companies to make, because as these political, the relations you have, for example, to the government of whatever is the relevant area, then how can you help that? Because that could be very crucial in the process of bringing the investment up, right?
Yes, but what we recommend, and this is especially in China, usually we have a lot of more tools to help, but in China, for example, what we are recommending is to find the right partner, to build trust with the partner, and that is someone who is good connected. And what we are stating is, so, okay, the one who knows the market best in the province, I mentioned you have to choose one of these provinces, is the government of the province, and it's the Communist Party. So this is a little bit difficult to support as an initiative from the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action to say directly, please get in contact with the provincial government or with the Communist Party. But that might be one of the steps you should take. And but the right step would be get in contact with someone who knows the market from the inside. So you have to have someone who should speak Chinese, who knows the culture. And then what we are doing is like, yeah, on the small level that we are opening this market to let them feel the market. This is something, or we are organizing like pavilions to get the people to the trade fairs. But this is all with the intention that they get in contact with locals, and hopefully with the right partner that can bring them to his or her network so that they can flourish. That would be the best, but yes, especially in China, it's difficult to support it the other way.
Okay, and now let's assume you're that field could be good, but what are at the moment you would say, Maria, that are really good fields to target China as one of the provinces or the districts, whatever that may be, but where you say like in regards to fields, like would it be genetics, would it be biosafety, what kind of fields do you reckon that there's a lot going on and that's interesting when you come from Europe? Because you might see fields where it's like there it's more difficult for us to get into the field, and other fields maybe more easier for us. What do you reckon for investors there?
Well, let's say I would say that we still see the field from our perspective, and We are the company working with plant-based natural products, and it's for sure, especially for China, it's the field where China is really very strong and where it's really focused at some point. But what we do see that there is a lot of movement in going in a sense of, well, maybe nutraceuticals as well and genetics. In nutraceuticals, in the sense like the healthcare system need to get further involvement, and there is more effort from the government to keep the people healthy. And there, for sure, that's the reason I said it's a little bit a combination also from traditional Chinese medicine, which is, well, maybe don't have the good, well, depends also on the people in the West world. It's seen also differently. But there is, so what we see also from the partners of us, there are a lot of partners who are having a good access with the food additives, for example, there, to increase their certain health level. And as the technology is growing fast and the government is supporting a lot, I would say that the genetics was also really increasing over the last years. And so it's a little bit... As I said, so China is very interested and very eager in new technologies and know-how. So basically, you can find everything there. And this is then the question, like, for what purpose do you want to go to China? So 20 years ago, as we have started there, for example, there was, for many companies, there was the idea, I get cheap labor force. It's not the case any longer, especially in Shanghai. It's much more expensive to have chemists in Shanghai than in Munich. So it's not any longer the same market there. So currently, it's like what the colleagues already said, it's really the focus. I go there for market, I go there for manufacturing, I go there for the certain technology, or I want to introduce my technology there. In best would be probably that you're not the first one with this technology, because it's always good to have certain referral then, which is always interesting. So because you would assume, okay, I have something innovative, I want to introduce it to the market, but it maybe won't make the things that easy.
So, but do you see, I mean, there's a lot of companies as well coming to you and wanting your advice, no? When they go to China. Do you see like a best practice? Do you see like who has done it well, and what were the challenges they then overcame to make it a good investment? Did you have a case like that when you were as well consulting?
So we have different kind of cases. So, for example, one is what also Roy said. If the person has bad experience or from the past, that's not really possible to persuade with any methods that China has changed, that there are new regulations, so you won't bring these people over there. It doesn't matter how good the market is. If the person is already interested and says, okay, can you help me, how do I better, then what we would normally advise, so it's really, language is still a challenge, because you really get all the papers in Chinese, and then how do you deal with this? How do you go through? How do you fill out all the regulatory forms? And that's the reason the partners are very important, and that's where we mostly help our other companies, colleagues. We really try to find the best partner there, in the sense that there is a partner with a track record, there is a partner who is already longer on the market, that you still have no problem with communication, language barrier again. And these are the cases where you can slowly start, where you can, Mr. Grasauer said, so you even ask to go there and started from there with the support also they offer from the local market, because there is an interest there, there is a support there, there is in a certain areas, especially IP, there is a huge support from the government, and actually it's also part of the reason why there are so many patents and why there are so many publications over the last years. So I think I have seen the numbers 2014, China has published 171,000 papers, and if you compare with the international level, there was like 47,000, where you assume, why? What is then the difference? What are the challenges in there? And that's the reason I would say to find the partner whom you would trust, it's the most important thing, because you cannot come over it. So you really have to know the locals there. And also with Communist Party and the province level, that's definitely true. So it's like really, you have to know the people, and it's not, that's the reason what I said in the beginning. You assume, okay, they also have the same, kind of the same political system, so they have also federal level, they have province level. It's the same like in Germany, but you cannot transform it so directly. So it really, it's a communist party, and it works a little bit different there in the sense that if you want to have the local connections, you go to the local connection and establish them.
Yeah. So, if someone in the audience has that need at the moment, they could come after this discussion to you and discuss that with you. By the way, if you have a question, just then raise your hand, because I will as well include your question, or you can think of one question now, and then we can include this question here in our panel. Dr. Grassauer. So, Andreas, when you now look into the future, I mean, you made your first step, that was successful, so probably you have appetite for more. So what are your thoughts to make this investment bigger and to become maybe the next BioNTech of Austria with a good China strategy? So what are your thoughts? How are you going to broaden that investment in China?
It's basically about giving leadership or working together like you would work in a team at home. Try to enable a trust that give all the people involved in a project the feeling that this is a safe thing we are doing. And at the end of the day, in our case, it's about getting the product to the market in China and growing it there. And probably from there then to other countries, and also from Austria to other countries. So doing this, the view has to be, to my point of view, to trust the people and to invest, to enable them and us to do the things that need to be done. And of course there are problems on the way, there are regulations, there are probably issues with production, there are probably issues with a competitor whatsoever. That's you have everywhere in the world. If there are any problems, you have to solve them together.
But in your due diligence concerning how you found your partner now, how many did you see? Why did you say, like, we didn't like these? What can you give as an information to investment interested people here in the audience? What were your procedures, your best practices there?
Now, first of all, it's both sides. The Chinese partner will have definitely a look on you as well. In such a case, being a publicly listed company makes it a little bit easier. Also, we are working with a publicly listed company, so there's a more transparency. Transparency is good because it increases trust.
And may I just add, do you have the feeling at the moment that the Chinese government pushes more that what publicly listed companies are doing in the field of healthcare for biotech, that they are not, can't make their little workarounds, that they're more straight, so there's which would be a good development for European investors, or is it not like that?
Actually, it's difficult to say. I would say overall the Chinese government wants to see the success of the entire branch, and if it sees things not working out well, probably it changes direction. So okay. You would never, if the things work out, probably they support more. That's the way it is, and it's probably more pragmatic than other governments are in the world, where there is a political or whatsoever reason or some personal reason for taking decisions. They simply want to have success of their life science industry. And if you are supporting that way, you'll probably be successful as well.
Okay, but if we take that from your point of view, which is maybe more broad than Andreas, what are the fields where you see a lot of companies, clients, different areas in this whole health field, let's put it that way, which includes biotechnology and everything what is here on this trade show. So where would you say there are the best chances for investors, and what are maybe fields where say, oh, there you have to be very cautious because the developments at the moment make it not so easy? What do you see there?
This is a very good question and challenge actually so far. The level of interest from China overall in the biotech side, particularly the advanced therapy, has a massive demand from China. I visited some of the suppliers, equipment, the lab testing or bioreactor, etc. They all said that the people already in China, they sell very well, and the demand is too high. So this will continue, the market demand, the potential opportunities. But there is an issue here today for Chinese companies and for companies from the German side, or I would say pan-European side. The problem, the challenge from China is that everything they realize the advanced therapy is a new area. It's new for many parts of the markets, but because China now the largest advanced therapy in terms of number of the companies, next to the US. US is number one. But then China has a huge number of new startups, or some of them well established now. But these people, in terms of the technical device equipment support, mostly rely on import. And the American players like Sativia, they dominate the markets, like 80% of the market share. So very much they integrated into the market. But for the local biotech companies, they are more interested in not to rely on a big player, particularly during the fast development time, and there's downtime, they have to wait. And also price-wise, the concern, the cost as well. So what they are looking for is a smaller suppliers, very specialized, to be active and who could be tailored, who could be based locally to support them. And they found that that's not many available. So that provides opportunities for some local companies move to the area, they expand. But because the local companies don't have much capable R&D capability, so they are sourcing partners from Europe and form the partnership to co-develop. And this actually, I represent a company from China for this exhibition. But I found that there's some of the reluctance from the European side, and they're reluctant to move to China, although there's a market potential there, but they worry about the complexity and the challenge there, for example, regulatory, product registration, regulatory, or government protection, or even being copied. So these people have the concerns, and they don't want to move now. Now that's created opportunities for partnership. And so actually I bumped into an investor who represented China. He's a German. And he said, they would like to now they're based in Switzerland, but they are looking for opportunity to invest. And he found it challenging to invest on those small media companies, and because some reluctance to go to China or to have a Chinese investor or say. So at the moment, it's quite sensitive because of a geopolitical issue. You talk about the war, trade war with the US, and also recently the Russian-Ukrainian war. But this is also make the political decisions has a negative influence, impact to the business side. So many German companies feel like they don't want to be trapped in between. So they're very cautious to make a further investment in China. But this certainly will increase the opportunities, for trading, directly import. I think that you will see more companies there. And the other thing is for strategic investment who are willing to form strategic partnership with the small, medium companies in Europe. So that's what I could see.
But when I see at Crunchbase, as I said, you see a lot of deals, they have a lot of statistics. You see, surprisingly enough, you see a lot of US companies making these kind of partnerships. So are we there somehow behind in Europe to understand this development? So what is, and I mean, Axel probably is like getting big ears saying like, well, there could be an opportunity for GTAA because you probably have these research companies that Ronghui would like to bring over to China. So, but why isn't it then really, what do we need to do to make this a flourishing business for German companies within these constraints of that the political system is different, right? But what is there to be done?
Well, this is an issue being quite often discussed in China. The main reason, I mean, of course, the multiple reasons behind. The main reason is that US, they have millions of Chinese, residents now. Because US is the biggest country to attract the Chinese talents for 4 decades. So many Chinese people, they work in the US, they integrated with the community, and the number, I'm not sure, it should be updated. So every single US biolab has average 1.5 Chinese technicians. So that's the number we talk about. So a lot of startup companies and multinational companies, they have Chinese employees. So they know the culture, they know their practice, they know everything about the US. So the first thing they do after these people move to China, set up their business, or being the senior management people, the first thing they do is to establish partnership with the US. It's natural. Whereas in Europe, there are not many number of people here, Chinese people, work in this industry or integrated in the industry. So there's the communication in between China and Europe is poor. And the other thing is the European companies generally, I could be wrong, that's generally more conservative and more cautious. And you need to take time to build this relationship. You need to be proactive to know these people. Once the Chinese business interests come to Europe, you feel scared. So there's a lot of communication in between. I think an organization like Axel's, his organization built the gap, built the platform. I worked a lot with the Swiss government, and they've done incredible job. And previously, nobody knew about the Basel, about the GGB, like a great general area. But every year, they put a lot of effort to visit the company, the science parks, and the hospitals, etc. A lot of communication. So I would say, based on what I understand, is that from the European country, probably about 10 countries, Switzerland, I think, did the best, has the best practice so far. UK did a great job, but the UK, there's a gap. The government push, but the industry is behind. So there's not many successful cases being implemented. But the Switzerland, on the other hand, doing quite a job. So because I work with them closely and they built the communication channel, has so far been very effective. So these are the two major factors. Of course, Germany has a lot to offer in terms of technology, biotech, medical equipment, but the impression is maybe influenced by the other industry, automotive industry or other industry. There are some negative elements about that, but be careful and hold on. So that might be the case.
So Axel, I mean, if I give that over to you, I mean, the German government had made more restriction in the level playing field, all these discussions that were in there. So there is more, from my point of view, the attitude of, we have to be very precautious. And then Ronghui says, but that makes it more difficult to get a share as an investor from that flourishing business in China. So because we need more interlinkages, more understanding of each other. So at GTIA, how do you overcome that dilemma? And
Okay.
please raise your hand if you have a question. All right.
So what we are trying is to giving the platform and to get into contact. But what I heard here was like the buzzword culture. And what I recognize is this, we are risk adverse in Germany and in Europe, I think. So you talked about like the Chinese coming from the US, and we have there also a total different mentality. What is risk? That risk is a chance, and this is what it's all about in venture capital, etc. And then they go to China, and then they have the same mentality, and so they're dealing with each other. And then we have a look at Europe, and everybody knows. So why is there a seed? And then there's a lack of growth capital. So this is also why there's also a little bit of risk adversity. And if we have then another information, so okay, China is a huge market, good numbers, but then there's another risk, and this is now the political risk. So I think it's a push and pull, this cultural mentality, and we might check what is Swiss doing better to connect China and Europe. But it's also, I think, a kind of mentality. I don't want to say it's everything about mentality, but I think this is the problem. And now the BMWK, the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action, Mr. Habeck, he told that we have to push innovation in Europe. Also the BMBF, the Education Ministry, they now want to push, and they say we have to see more a chance within the risk. So we have to change the mentality a bit. Then we have to, of course, get the money in Europe. And then I think we might also overcome it. And what we are doing as an organization is to, yes, to inform about the market, about the possibilities, inform about the risks, and then to get the, how to say, to cool the feelings down. But the fear especially, which the fear of risk.
So if we take the Chinese strategy of dual circulation, right, strengthen your inner market, but as well strengthen your export market as well, right? So, and sometimes I have the feeling we are trying to protect, not to strengthen so much our inner market, but not to see that, okay, with like in the word competition, we could profit as well from all this, what is so dynamic in China. When I just looked at some data on Crunchbase, and there's nearly every day a Series A, a Series B round that you can find there. Here, 14th of June, mall breeding, Series A round in China. Mega Robo, which you probably may have heard of, Series C round, $300 million. 15th of June. 16th of June, Tongyi Medical Technology Series B round, 100 million yuan. 17th of June, Hangzhou Biomedical Technology Series A. So there's a lot of dynamic going on where investors normally say, I want to get a share of it. And I have the feeling it's like, we're looking at that, but don't know how to take part because we're too much, we don't know. And obviously there are valid arguments that we should for our intellectual property, and that the system works different in China. But still, though, I think one of the conclusions for the future should be like we have to create level grounds where we can get more of both worlds, where we can get more of this dynamic in China with investments from here, with probably offering research capability where we're not too afraid of losing intellectual property. And on the other hand, China is interested in anything because China has progressed within the last 10 years so much that they're, I'd say on the research level, in some fields are even better now that we are, or they're about to keep up. So we have to be another partner for them in that sense. So what and as well, I mean, from you both now, and then I'd like to as well hear your opinion on that. So what do we need to do there as investors in that sense?
I just would add, quite interesting. So you mentioned what we tried a lot of years, and this is now like the big discussion. I'm just repeating the big discussion what we see on television last night as well in the öffentlich-rechtlichen, is that, yeah, we thought that it's so attractive to do business with China, and through business they get to know us and we get to know them, and then everybody will be happy, and then we will have a liberal market and we will have democracy all over the world. But then we now recognize that capitalism and business works also without democracy. And what you're proposing now is like that what we did the last 20, 40 years. So that we want to have a change through business. Yes, we have a change, but we are changing through business. And we are getting closer, and that we have seen with Russia. So I don't want to get too much into the politics, but this is a little bit what I see here now. So, okay, yeah, we are all persons, so we are doing business. So this is really attractive to deal with China. But on the other hand, we have to think about it if you want to deal our political rights against profits.
Maybe Andreas, can you already bring that into an ending statement? Because I'd like from everybody of you a short statement, what you would say, like, for the next 2 years as an investor in that field of biotechnology, of analytics, of healthcare, what would you say is the one or two things that you really should keep your eyes on, yet you should be really put a lot of energy into to make your investment good, because then we will roundabout here, we will finish at 5 o'clock, so everybody has the time for an ending statement.
Yeah, for me it's very down to practical things. I'm absolutely not in the geopolitics. I think it doesn't matter what a CEO from a small company says to that, but if you're doing in the next 2 years, the first thing I would recommend, buy yourself a very good video conference system. You won't get too much of a travel to China. That's the first recommendation, and try to establish the partnerships via these routes. The second thing is, when you consider investment and working with Chinese partners, keep in mind that those people probably, for example, could have spent 2 weeks in a lockdown in a single room, and they probably have difficulties with that. So you can ask them, how do you feel today after sitting 2 weeks in a room? That also helps to make friends, and we're gonna see difficulties in travel, in trade, in getting goods in and out of China. If you send samples there, even for our partners to getting them out of the customs, these are the practical things you can expect in the next 2 years. I think it won't really leave so soon.
Maria, what are your two major things for the next 2 years for investors that you say, like, please consider that?
I wanted to add that I also believe in education. So like Ron Hu also said that in US it's a different situation, because there are a lot of students coming from China to the US, and then they bring their connections back to China. It's much less in Germany. It's still possible. So what we also can do in Germany or in Europe, so it's always interesting to see that we compare Germany with China. It's completely different dimensions in the size of population, in the size of economy as well. So I would rather go for Europe and China, and then it's for sure the lack of information, the lack of education what we have. And therefore, what you can do for your investment, it's like for every investment, do your homework. So it might have different questions for China, because it's not only how do I prepare my business for this investment, it's also do I know the environment, what are the actors, what are the regions, what is the current political situation, what is the current travel situation, logistics situation. Yeah, so 2 weeks is nice. Shanghai was shut down for, I think, like 80 days, and there were a lot of ships standing in the port, and then you could not get anything out of there. So, and the question is like, it's also different policy there. So, these are the questions to address. So you have to prepare yourself for this.
Wonderful thing. Axel, what's your final statement for the next 2 years for investors? What would be your biggest advice?
Yes, I think I already mentioned it during my presentation, and this is to have a strategy. And then, okay, it will become more expensive in any case, but yes, we should take this as an impulse to grow. And I think people are smartest in crisis, and I just want to repeat that. And I think I hope it won't be the big clash. So in any case, we can learn a lot now, and I think within 2 years we are one step further, and then we will see maybe we're best friends.
And giving more energy into understanding the political dynamics, right? That was something you
No, not only, but it's just another dimension we have to add now. Before we were just talking about what is happening economically in China, and this is our mission as German Trade and Invest. But now there's this new component, and we can't ignore it anymore. So just to inform about it and to consider it.
Thank you very much for being here, to be with us, and now we can discuss without the headsets and the microphones. We are all around here. Michael Zahn is here. Our founder is here. So we can discuss now in depth, and I think even more than sharing the information is networking to get more understanding. What is not the best point when not to do it here? So thank you, and thank you for all your contributions.